Have you ever felt the quiet weight of being completely alone and wondered if there's something wrong with you, if the world itself is moving while you remain frozen on the sidelines? Most of us are taught that friendship is the ultimate validation, that our worth is measured by the number of people who call us friend. Yet, what if that assumption is a veil, a mask that hides a deeper truth about our existence? Imagine for a moment that the state of being without friends is not a deficiency, but a portal, a doorway into a dimension where the self is unchained, where the echoes of society's expectations no longer dictate your peace. This is not despair, it is a revelation. And today I will show you how to step beyond the fear, beyond the need for external approval, and discover the psychological truth that changes everything. When we speak of friendship, we often reduce it to companionship, shared laughter, and a sense of belonging, as if its value can be measured in the frequency of meetings, the warmth of messages, or the number of people who recognize us. But look closer, and a different truth emerges. What we seek in others is not merely companionship, but a reflection of the self. Each friend is, in essence, a mirror, one that shows us fragments of our own consciousness, fragments that are often hidden from our direct view. In the absence of friends, these mirrors vanish, and the mind, accustomed to relying on external confirmation, experiences a profound disorientation. There is a subtle panic that arises, an existential tremor, as if a vital layer of reality has suddenly disappeared. Yet within this absence lies a unique opportunity, a rare moment when the layers of illusion are peeled back, revealing the terrain of the inner world in unprecedented clarity. In solitude, the landscape of the mind begins to unfold. It is as if the noise of the world, the chatter, the opinions, the subtle social cues that usually direct our thoughts, recedes, allowing the raw texture of consciousness to appear. You begin to notice thoughts you never allowed yourself to examine, patterns of desire and avoidance that operate silently beneath the surface. Emotions that were once distracted by external engagement now rise, unshielded, demanding recognition. This internal terrain is neither flat nor uniform. It is rich, variegated, and sometimes treacherous. Shadows of past experiences linger in hidden corners, while the seeds of future potential quietly stir beneath layers of habit and conditioning. Time itself takes on a different quality. Without the constant external scaffolding of social life, the hours stretch and bend. Moments of reflection deepen into expanses of insight, and the mind begins to experience its own depth, as if peering into a vast, unexplored landscape. Solitude forces us to confront ourselves in ways that companionship never can. While friends often provide validation, reassurance, and a gentle reflection of our choices, they can also shield us from uncomfortable truths. When alone, these shields drop. You encounter your own impulses without distraction, your fears without mitigation, and your longings without redirection. This is not a realm of emptiness, but of heightened perception. You begin to observe how much of your identity has been constructed in response to the presence or absence of others. You realize that many desires, fears, and habits are not truly yours. They are projections, echoes of cultural expectations and unexamined assumptions. The absence of friends, which initially seems like a loss, becomes a lens that reveals the subtle architectures of the self, structures previously invisible amidst social engagement. As you traverse this inner landscape, you start to notice an unusual freedom. Without external mirrors, the mind begins to cultivate a form of self-reliance that is rare and precious. Creativity emerges in ways that were impossible when attention was divided. Intuition sharpens, and emotional responses, once reactive to the presence of others, gain a nuanced autonomy. The inner world is not just a place of reflection, it becomes a laboratory of consciousness, a site where you can experiment with your identity, confront your shadow, and encounter your authentic desires without compromise. Here, in this solitude, the self can expand, unbound by the expectations or judgments of others. You begin to see that companionship, while pleasurable and culturally valued, is ultimately secondary to the mastery of one's own interior reality. This revelation is both humbling and empowering. It illuminates the fact that the true measure of your being is not found in the validation of others, but in the richness of your own inner landscape. In solitude, you gain access to the hidden dimensions of thought and feeling, the subtle currents that shape perception, and the unseen forces that guide choice. Each reflection of the self, each insight, becomes a step toward a profound autonomy, a state in which your sense of value and peace no longer depends on external factors. Instead, it arises from the direct experience of your own consciousness, a direct communion with the very essence of who you are. Ultimately, this inner journey transforms the meaning of friendship itself. Companionship is no longer a crutch or a mirror you need to validate existence. Instead, it becomes a conscious choice, a supplementary presence in a life already rich with self-understanding. The absence of friends, rather than a limitation, is a gateway to a depth of perception, an opportunity to inhabit the mind fully, unmediated, and to witness the intricate patterns of thought, emotion, and consciousness that constitute the true landscape of existence. In embracing this solitude, one discovers a paradoxical fullness. The world outside may be silent, the mirrors absent, yet the inner terrain is vast, profound, and immeasurably alive. There is a moment in solitude when the familiar patterns of thought and expectation begin to fracture. At first, it is subtle, a slight unease, a feeling that something is not aligned, that the world you thought you understood is slipping just beyond your grasp. Most people interpret this as a deficit, a lack of something essential, usually companionship or external validation. But this moment, as disorienting as it feels, is far more profound than mere absence. It is the threshold of perception itself, a subtle doorway into the unseen, where the ordinary distinctions between self and other, presence and emptiness, begin to blur. Here, in this delicate tension, you encounter a strange paradox. The very discomfort you fear is the signpost pointing toward insight, the signal that the familiar scaffolding of social identity is being dismantled so that something deeper can emerge. When no one else is around, the mind begins to examine itself with an intensity that is impossible in social settings. Without mirrors to reflect back your image, without voices to affirm or deny your worth, you are forced to confront yourself directly. At first, this is unsettling. Thoughts that were once pushed aside bubble to the surface, emotions you have long avoided rise unfiltered. You may experience doubt, longing, even a quiet panic. Yet within this disorientation is the potential for extraordinary clarity. The absence of friends, the silence that feels oppressive, reveals what companionship often conceals, that many of the anxieties and desires we project outward are actually internal. The longing for connection is frequently a reflection of an inner craving, for recognition, for understanding, for a part of ourselves we have not yet met. Solitude strips away the distractions, leaving only the raw self to be observed. This is why the state of being alone can be so transformative. In the quiet, the illusions fall away. You begin to perceive the subtle architecture of your mind, the recurring patterns of thought, the hidden narratives that shape your emotions, the unexamined beliefs that direct your actions. You may notice for the first time that many of the ways you measure yourself against others are arbitrary, constructs of habit and social conditioning rather than intrinsic truths. And here lies the unseen path, the realization that what you thought was absence is actually presence, that the world you feared being without is the world you carry within. The solitude that seemed like deprivation becomes a mirror far more profound than any external relationship could provide. The mind resists this truth initially because it contradicts everything society has taught. Humans are conditioned to fear emptiness, to seek external validation, to rely on companions to define their significance. But what if the opposite is true? What if the very thing you fear, being alone, is the instrument of your liberation? The unseen path reveals that the discomfort of solitude is not a void to be filled, but a fertile space to be inhabited. Each moment of quiet, each encounter with your own thoughts and emotions is an opportunity to learn, to refine perception, to disentangle your true self from the layers of expectation that have been placed upon it. The process is subtle and often slow. You may notice fleeting sensations of liberation, moments when the mind, untethered from the constant need for external reflection, begins to sense its own depth. These moments expand into awareness. You recognize that the longing for others was never about lacking them, but about discovering yourself. The world outside, once feared as silent and indifferent, now seems less intimidating. The unseen path is not a rejection of friendship or connection. It is an invitation to encounter your own consciousness fully, to experience the profound richness of your inner world, and to recognize that the mind, unanchored from external mirrors, is capable of a freedom and creativity that social engagement alone cannot provide. And here, in the stillness, perception begins to bend. You start to see patterns in life that were invisible when you relied on reflection from others. Small coincidences, subtle synchronicities, and inner nudges become more apparent. The mind, freed from the constant need for external validation, begins to sense the hidden currents of reality, the invisible flows of thought, intention, and presence that operate beneath the surface of ordinary experience. The solitude that once felt like emptiness now pulses with a quiet energy, revealing that the world inside is far richer than the world outside. The unseen path is not a lonely road. It is a secret passage into the deeper dimensions of awareness, where the self learns to navigate without reliance on the mirrors, echoes, and approval of others, and where the very act of being alone becomes a practice of subtle mastery, perception, and insight. The psychological truth about solitude and friendship is both disarming and liberating. Your worth, your completeness, and your inner peace have never depended on the presence of others. From childhood, we are conditioned to believe that validation must come from outside, that approval, recognition, and friendship are the currencies of value. We are taught to measure ourselves against social mirrors, to seek reflections of ourselves in the eyes of others, and to feel incomplete when those mirrors are absent. Yet, beneath this conditioning lies a deeper reality, one that is rarely spoken aloud and almost never acknowledged. The self, in its purest form, is whole, sovereign, and intrinsically sufficient. The longing for companionship is not evidence of deficiency. It is the mind reaching toward a reflection of what already exists within. In solitude, stripped of the external validation and distraction that usually occupy our attention, we are confronted with ourselves in a way that is unprecedented and often unsettling. Thoughts, desires, fears, and longings rise unshielded, revealing the subtle architecture of consciousness that remains hidden in social interaction. Here, in the stillness, you confront the raw patterns of your mind, the automatic judgments, the unexamined fears, the habitual cravings for approval. And you begin to see that much of what we perceive as a need for others is, in truth, a reflection of our own unfinished recognition of ourselves. The absence of friendship, which at first seems like deprivation, is in fact a direct invitation to meet yourself fully, to confront your inner landscape, and to acknowledge your inherent completeness. Consider this. When you are alone, you are no longer distracted by the constant interplay of social expectations. You can observe your thoughts and emotions without the pressure of performing or conforming. This freedom allows for a depth of introspection that is impossible in the presence of mirrors, companions, or external validations. You begin to notice patterns of attachment, projections, and fears that you have unconsciously carried your whole life. You discover that much of what you have sought externally, approval, friendship, affirmation, is not missing from your life, but merely a reflection of your own capacity to acknowledge, accept, and understand yourself. In solitude, the self becomes both the observer and the observed, the seeker and the destination, and this duality generates an unshakable sense of inner authority. The profound insight is this: companionship and friendship are enhancements to life, not prerequisites for meaning or peace. The mind that has learned to rely on the presence of others for validation is fragile, perpetually subject to the fluctuations of circumstance, opinion, and perception. The mind that cultivates a relationship with itself, however, becomes unbreakable, resilient, and luminous. In solitude, you develop a sensitivity to the currents of your own consciousness, a mastery over your inner narrative, and a direct communion with the truth of your being. Your value, your sense of wholeness, and your emotional equilibrium are no longer contingent on external forces. They are inherent, arising from the recognition of your own existence, the awareness of your own depth, and the acknowledgement of your own sovereignty. This truth is deeply mystical because it reveals the hidden mechanics of reality. The world outside, with its friends, social dynamics, and mirrors, is only one layer of existence. The inner world, unobserved and unacknowledged by most, contains a universe as vast and intricate as the cosmos itself. When you are alone, you enter that universe directly. You begin to perceive subtle connections between thought and feeling, between intention and manifestation, between presence and energy. You realize that your inner life is not secondary to social life, it is the foundation from which all experience emerges. In recognizing this, the fear of loneliness dissolves entirely, replaced by an awe-inspiring sense of freedom, presence, and self-mastery. Solitude, then, is not emptiness, it is initiation. It is the crucible in which the self encounters itself fully, without distraction or compromise. Friendship, when it arrives, is no longer a lifeline. It is a choice, an enhancement, a shared reflection, not a necessity. And in this understanding lies the power that most people never access: the ability to inhabit one's own consciousness with authority, grace, and unshakable calm. The truth beneath companionship is that you have always carried the entire universe within you, and the peace, insight, and wholeness you have sought from others were always available within your own mind and soul. To live in this awareness is to step into a state of freedom and clarity that cannot be disturbed, influenced, or diminished by the presence or absence of anyone else. The experience of being alone, of navigating life without friends or constant social validation, is more common than most people realize. At first, it can feel like a void, an emptiness pressing against the mind and heart, a quiet reminder of something missing. Yet this very absence is not a flaw. It is a gateway to deeper understanding. Solitude is an opportunity to explore the inner landscape of consciousness, a chance to observe thoughts, emotions, and impulses without the distraction of others' expectations. Loneliness, rather than being a source of despair, serves as a mirror reflecting the self that has long been overlooked. It highlights patterns, desires, and hidden tensions that are often buried beneath the noise of social life, giving the mind the rare chance to witness itself fully. Within this inner sanctuary, awareness expands. The longing for companionship, the restlessness felt in quiet moments, and the fear of being unseen are not weaknesses. They are guides pointing toward deeper presence and self-recognition. This is a space where reflection becomes sacred, where the mind can untangle habitual reactions, observe recurring thoughts, and notice how attachment to external validation has shaped perception. Here, the self begins to cultivate a subtle autonomy, a quiet sovereignty, realizing that fulfillment is not granted by others, but emerges naturally when consciousness is fully acknowledged. The process of turning inward is gradual and layered. By engaging attentively with the flow of thoughts, one discovers that the inner world is far richer than the outer. Emotions, once ignored or suppressed, reveal their subtle language. Patterns of longing, fear, and desire illuminate the mind's hidden architecture. In solitude, it becomes possible to meet all aspects of oneself, the curious, the fearful, the joyful, the uncertain, without judgment or avoidance. This practice nurtures a profound resilience, an awareness that true completeness arises internally and is not contingent on the presence or absence of friends. Solitude transforms into a teacher, and the self into a companion. The absence of others does not signify emptiness, but a rare presence, the opportunity to inhabit one's own consciousness fully. This inner sanctuary reveals the hidden currents of perception, the subtle interplay of thought and feeling, and the quiet rhythms of life that are often unnoticed in social distraction. By cultivating this awareness, anyone can discover a deep sense of peace, joy, and fulfillment that companionship alone cannot provide. The mind learns to anchor itself in its own depth, to recognize its own richness, and to find satisfaction in simply existing, fully attentive, fully awake, and fully alive. In this space, the fear of loneliness dissolves, the quiet becomes a companion, and presence itself is celebrated. Thoughts, emotions, and awareness converge into a living meditation on the self, revealing that the journey through solitude is not a punishment but a profound initiation. Here, one experiences the extraordinary truth that peace, completeness, and inner freedom have always been accessible within, waiting to be discovered, honored, and embraced. The inner sanctuary offers a life of subtle mastery, where the soul is nurtured, the mind is freed, and the self discovers its luminous, unshakable wholeness. The invitation I want to offer is subtle, almost imperceptible yet profoundly transformative. It is not a call to action in the conventional sense. There is no checklist, no step-by-step instruction, no external ritual to perform. The invitation is inward. It is a gentle urging to turn your attention toward the landscape of your own consciousness, to explore the depths of your mind and heart with curiosity, courage, and openness. Most of us have been conditioned to seek solutions outside ourselves, to look for validation, companionship, or reassurance from the world. But the truth, the subtle and almost invisible truth, is that the world outside is never the source of the peace we long for. The world outside reflects what is already within. To awaken to this truth is to begin a journey not across the globe, but into the universe that exists within your own being. I invite you to observe your thoughts as they arise, without judgment or expectation. Watch the subtle patterns that emerge, the way fear surfaces when you feel alone, the way desire for connection manifests as restlessness, the way comparison whispers its subtle criticisms. In witnessing these patterns, you do not reject them, nor do you chase them away. You let them exist, like clouds passing across the sky, and in doing so, you discover something extraordinary. A space of awareness that is untouched by the fluctuations of mind and emotion. This space is your true self, the part of you that is always present, always complete, always capable of observing without being disturbed. Solitude is the doorway to this awareness. When friends are absent, when social validation is silent, and when the mind reaches for something external to define itself, you have a rare opportunity, the chance to inhabit your own consciousness fully. You can explore your thoughts, your fears, and your desires, and recognize that they are not your limits. They are the tools through which you understand yourself more deeply. In this practice, you begin to cultivate an inner authority, a subtle sovereignty over your own experience. You realize that you do not need others to define your value, nor do you need external circumstances to grant you peace. These arise naturally when you acknowledge, accept, and embrace the totality of your own mind and soul. The invitation extends beyond mere observation. It is an urging to nurture a relationship with yourself that is compassionate, curious, and unshakably present. Begin to listen to the quiet signals of your inner life, the thoughts that have been dismissed, the emotions that have been hidden, the intuitive nudges that guide you toward truth. Treat these inner currents with the same attention and respect you might give to a trusted friend. In doing so, you cultivate a profound awareness of your own being, a state in which the presence of others is no longer necessary for validation or reassurance. You become your own anchor, your own companion, your own witness. As this awareness deepens, you'll notice a subtle alchemy occurring. The discomfort, the longing, the unease that once accompanied solitude begins to dissolve. Fear of loneliness no longer dominates your perception. In its place arises a quiet confidence, a serenity rooted not in the absence of challenge, but in the recognition of your own completeness. You begin to see that solitude is not a punishment. It is a sacred teacher, a conduit to higher perception, a doorway to the hidden dimensions of consciousness that are otherwise inaccessible in the noise of social life. The more fully you inhabit this awareness, the more you experience life as an unfolding mystery, rich with subtle patterns, hidden meanings, and quiet revelations. And finally, the invitation is a gentle reminder. This journey is yours alone, yet it is also universal. Countless seekers, thinkers, mystics, and philosophers have walked this path before, discovering in solitude the truth that companionship, while valuable, is never essential for peace or understanding. By stepping inward, by honoring your own consciousness, and by embracing the quiet, you enter a realm of freedom, insight, and self-sovereignty that is rare and profoundly transformative. The unseen path, the inner journey, is open to you now. All that is required is willingness, the willingness to turn your attention inward to meet yourself fully, and to awaken to the subtle, luminous truth that you have always carried within. And now, as we come to the edge of this reflection, I invite you to consider the quiet power of solitude, not as a deficit, not as emptiness, but as a profound presence that has always been available to you. To walk through life without friends or without the constant validation of others may at first feel like a curse, a void in the fabric of your experience. Yet, If you can shift your perception, you will see that this silence is a sacred space, a temple of consciousness where the self reveals itself without distraction. In this quiet, the mind becomes a clear mirror, reflecting not what society demands or expects, but what is true, eternal, and intrinsic within you. The absence of companionship becomes a form of initiation, a subtle rite that brings you into direct contact with the raw, unconditioned reality of your own being. In this circle of silence, you begin to notice the patterns of your inner world with unparalleled clarity. Thoughts that were once fleeting, unnoticed, or dismissed rise into awareness. Emotions that were buried beneath the noise of social life surface, asking only to be seen, acknowledged, and understood. The longing for connection that once dominated your perception softens, replaced by a quiet recognition you have never been truly alone, because the essence of the universe, the subtle currents of consciousness, and the depth of your own mind are always present. The void that once frightened you is not empty. It is alive, it is responsive, it is a mirror reflecting the vastness of your own existence. And there is a paradox here, subtle yet profound. In embracing solitude, you discover the fullness of life. You realize that companionship, while beautiful and enriching, is never the source of ultimate fulfillment. True fulfillment emerges from the communion you cultivate with your own consciousness, the intimacy you develop with your thoughts, emotions, and being. When you inhabit your own presence fully, without distraction or judgment, you access a freedom that cannot be taken, a peace that cannot be disturbed, and a wisdom that surpasses the limitations of social perception. You begin to see life as a continuous flow, a vast interconnected field of subtle meaning, in which each moment, each experience, is an opportunity to deepen your understanding of self and reality. In this stillness, the world outside no longer dominates your attention. The laughter, the chatter, the fleeting interactions, all are recognized for what they are, transient expressions of a larger, more enduring truth. The true companions you have sought, the reflections, the validation, the sense of being understood, exist within your own awareness. In solitude, you discover the power of witnessing yourself fully, without reliance on anyone else. This witnessing becomes a form of liberation, a quiet sovereignty over your own life, a recognition that the mind, when trained to perceive without distraction, is capable of an extraordinary depth of insight, perception, and joy. And so, as the circle completes, you arrive at a profound understanding. To be alone is not to be incomplete. To walk the path of solitude is not to suffer a loss. It is to enter the secret chamber of the self, where awareness expands, perception deepens, and the mind touches its own infinite nature. In this silence, you encounter the sacred pulse of existence, the subtle rhythm of consciousness, and the unspoken truth that the universe itself is mirrored within you. You have always carried this temple of awareness within your being. The absence of friends, the quiet spaces between social interaction, the moments of stillness, they are not obstacles but portals, gateways to the luminous, boundless core of your consciousness. And as you carry this understanding forward, you may notice that life itself transforms. The moments of solitude no longer feel like deprivation, but like a subtle ritual, a dance with the infinite. The quiet becomes your companion, the reflection of your own awareness, and the unseen currents of consciousness become a guide. The circle closes not with finality, but with resonance. A deep, lingering, unspoken recognition that peace, wisdom, and fulfillment were never outside of you, they were always already within. The journey into solitude is the journey home, and in that return you find the quiet magic that surpasses all expectation, the subtle freedom that is the essence of being, and the profound truth that to be fully alone is to be fully alive.